For years, men have been left out of the interior design conversation. It has been presumed that they are uninterested or that they are incapable of expressing what they truly want for their home. I'm here to tell you that that is a bunch of hooey. Yes, I said hooey. Research shows that men and women think and interact differently with the built environment. This is due to the fact that women are more likely to feel physical threat from their surroundings, and therefore they record it, they think about it, they talk about it. Men, on the other hand, well, they lack this language because they haven't needed it. Their physical safety has rarely been in jeopardy, unless, well, they're actually being chased by a lion. Welcome to A Gentleman's Home, the podcast, a modern approach to men's interiors grounded in personal narrative and brain science. I'm your host, Dale B. Cohen, founder of DALE COHEN DESIGNSTUDIO and A Gentleman's Home, with over 2 decades of experience blending architecture and interior design. On this podcast, we will explore how brain science shapes the way men experience the built environment and how asking men the right questions allows us to understand their personal narrative and allows us to develop their visual data set, leading to creating a home that they will love. So whether you're starting from scratch, redesigning, or simply looking to elevate your space, this is the podcast for you. This isn't about trends, it's about creating a home that feels like you. I'm delighted that you are joining us today. Good afternoon and welcome to episode 2, the why episode. So let's start with the obvious. Yes, I'm staking out what on its face seems like controversial territory. I specialize in designing for men. This seems like an odd place to inhabit for a feminist, right? At a time when women's rights are being trampled by the double helix of right-wing jurisprudence and backroom moralizing, at a moment when the body is once again the battlefield and judges are frowning on the notion of our bodily autonomy for women, I decide it's time to specialize in designing for men. And I get it, I do. On the surface, it sounds like ideological heresy. I am a feminist, yes, always and still, staking out the domain of masculine design. It sounds like the opening of a really, really bad joke. So a feminist walks into a bachelor pad. ... As with most things worth taking seriously in architecture, interior design, or politics, this is not a conversation about surfaces. It is about structure and substructure. It is about the subconscious and the conscious. This story, this project, this hypothesis of mine begins not with ideology. It begins with my practice. I am frequently in the middle of the most fraught space I can imagine, the architecture of human relationships, i.e., I am in the middle of people's marriages. And let me tell you, this is not where I want to be. Whether I'm renovating a large home or redesigning and furnishing an apartment, when you work with a couple or a family, you are in their sock drawer and their bank account. It is a complex web, one fraught with tension and landmines. The spatial is personal, the personal is spatial, is a good motto to think about. So let's get back to how I began all of this. When the Lehman Brothers crash hit, causing a recession, you remember that 2008-2009 dream shatterer? Well, that was the kind of collapse that gives one, well, let's say space and time, a lot of time. And I had a vast tundra of extra room in my calendar, and a curious moment of clarity happened. My last client in Los Angeles, prior to moving back to New York City, was a single guy. He was a delight. He was easy to work with. He was engaged and thoughtful, and for the most part, he seemed happy with the process and the completed project. There was no blood on the walls. There were no therapy sessions designed as walkthroughs. Might I say there was even a sense of joy. So could it be that designing for men was more aligned with my work process or my personality? Was I simply more suited to working with men? Did they respond differently to my process and my personality? Was it me or was it them? And in that recession-era quietude, oceans and oceans of quietude, I began what all good architects eventually do: research. I called the project Bachelor by Dale. It was a blog, a study, a rumination on gender and design, on gender in design, on the business of making space. It was whatever I could dream up that week. So now let's take a quick detour through science, my favorite kind of science, which is neuroscience. Here is a reductive, somewhat controversial thesis. Well, it's only controversial if you're not a scientist. Men and women process space differently because of evolution. I know, it's crazy. Women, honed by millennia of being the more vulnerable sex in a hostile world, developed what researchers call diffuse awareness, what I like to call 24-hour sonar. It's pinging all the time for women. Is this alley safe? Is this corner too dark? Who's behind me on the street? Women have been trained both biologically and socially to read their environments with hypervigilance. We have to stay safe, and it is something that occupies our conscious mind and our subconscious mind. Men, by contrast, are granted the privilege, and yes, I said privilege, of single focus. There are no lions in the bushes for them. There is no constant scanning. It is just a straight line out of the front door to their destination, which is to say, not inattentive in their ruminations and journeys, but it is selective inattention. And that, dear listeners, is a whole different kind of perception. So let's bring this back to my practice. When I meet a female client, she arrives with 438 Pinterest boards, 10 years of Elle Decor and Architectural Digest, and a phone that is bursting with every possible saved image that she has thought of since she was a teenager. She's fluent in the language of space. She has all the words, and she has the references. When I meet a male client for the first time, he arrives with an American Express card. Now, this is not a slight to me or my professionalism. It's an important signal. It's a signal from the universe of men. One that for too long may have been ignored with the wave of a hand and mild laughter. And we would be wrong to take this as a direct sign of a lack of interest, because men too have a relationship with space. They simply do not have access to the language of space. That content is latent. It is buried in a lockbox at the back of their brain, stamped with only open in case of emergency. And that said, men walk through the world registering the physical environment. Yet it is without this ready language to describe what they like and dislike. It is not their fault. The guilt lies with the design industry because we have not bothered to help them learn that language. We have failed at providing the necessary tools for engagement. Early in this research process, back when the project was a Bachelor by Dale and it is now a gentleman's home, this is one of those oft-hyped light bulb moments that I had. I was working with a young Turk in finance. He had just scored his first big job. He had just gotten that big plum apartment. It was on Union Square. It was one of those classic New York rites of passage. And he shows up to our first meeting with an American Express card. Not with an inspiration board. There are no saved tear sheets. There is nothing on his phone. So I gave him an assignment: buy shelter magazines at every airport during his upcoming work trip. Rip out what you like, and when you return, we'll meet again. 2 weeks later, he shows up with one magazine and one dog-eared page. And I don't think he was even committed to that. I think it was just he was in a hurry and had to finish up the assignment. And in that moment, that very instant, I knew I had failed my client. The problem was my method. I had given him an assignment as if he were one of my female clients. I had yet to figure out the process that I needed to get into his head. Because let me share with you a secret as old as time. Men do not operate in the built environment the same way that women do. They do not record it. They do not language it. And it is not because they lack taste. It is because the system has failed to cultivate them. It has failed to figure out how to engage them. So in that moment, I pivoted. I asked him about the cities he traveled to, the hotels he stayed in, and the restaurants he visited. I asked about the lobbies, the guest rooms, the bars, the suits he wore and the suits his clients wore, the cars he was shuttled around in, and even the planes he flew on. I asked him to relay his experiences, and from there, patterns always emerge. Here's the core of all of it. Men do not lack design preferences. They lack proper prompts. What's the equivalent of a Pinterest board for a man who can tell you every detail of the watch he bought when he got his first promotion? I asked him about his first luxury hotel stay and where he booked a weekend away with his favorite girl. I ask questions he can answer so that I can discover everything I need to know about his palate, his sensibility, and his sense of proportion. These are his references. These are the building blocks of taste. I call it an experiential archive or a visual data set, and every man has one. Everybody has one. Designing for men is not a betrayal of my feminism. It is an acknowledgement of blind spots in the industry, in my process, and in ourselves in relating to people who are other than ourselves. It is about women treating men like other women instead of understanding who men are and meeting them where they are. This endeavor is feminist because it is an act of listening to everybody. It is about listening to the voices of those who are not traditionally fluent in the language of design. It's about creating systems that empower people, and yes, men are people, to express their spatial identity, whatever their gender and however they speak it. And trust me, I never, ever, ever forget the political irony in all of this. In a world that is still designed predominantly for men and by men, just go to any public restroom in your favorite museum or library or even bookshop or hotel. You will see a space that is more often than not designed for men by men, and it drives me nuts. And yet I digress. What we are really talking about is not just power, it is presence. It is understanding. When we speak of designing for men in this context, I am not talking about recreating the Madman sets or traditional bachelor pads or even glorifying alpha masculinity. What I am talking about is enabling men, ordinary, busy, emotionally literate men, to participate meaningfully in the shaping of their environment. So yes, I design for men, unabashedly. And I design for women and for couples and families, and for whomever walks through my door with a checkbook or a credit card. And I design with the understanding that the entry points for everyone are different. The archives and visual data sets for each are different. So therefore the questions must also be different. Because good design is not about taste, it's about synthesis. It's about decoding someone's lived experience and giving it form. That's always been my job. It's about finding buried architectural and design memories, the restaurants, the cars, the wristwatches, the suits, and assembling them into a home, into your home. So if you're still asking, why, Dale, do you design for men? I would answer because inclusion means everybody. Because architecture, and especially interior design, is biography. It is written in drywall and wood, marble and linen, glass and sunlight. And because maybe, just maybe, the act of asking better questions is the most radical design move of all. Thank you for your listening. Until next time, please remember your home is more than a backdrop. It's the first draft of your story, so design it with intention. I trust that in our time together you've gained more than just the fleeting satisfaction of hearing someone chatter on about design. It is my hope that this conversation has reshaped your thinking about our world and how we relate to one another. For more about Dale Cohen Design Studio and A Gentleman's Home, please visit us at dalecohendesignstudio.com. There you will see some of our design work and learn more about the breadth of my career from teaching to leadership. And you can find out about our new collaborative e-design consulting services. For anyone who mentions podcast in the subject line of your email to us, we will provide a 15-minute free consultation. Thanks so much for your listening.